Okay, this video, what I want to show you is how to create a simple reflection with an object. If you're doing, say, a product shot, or you need to put something in, create a kind of a simulated reflection. We're going to get into more about layers. We're going to get into masking, and so we'll also talk about some other things like canvas size and actually putting images together as a starting point. There will be other videos on the compositing, but this is probably the simplest composite technique you can use. So the first thing we want to do is we start off with a sample image here, and we want to isolate it from the background because we want to drop it in and put our own background in this. So again, we'll start with a quick selection tool just to see how it goes, and I'm going to go ahead and select the background. Now, if you are shooting for the assignment, highly recommended, then you will shoot it against a background that would be appropriate for the object. So in other words, if it's a dark object like this is, you're going to shoot it against a white background. If it's a light object, shoot it against a dark background. So you have that contrast, makes it easier to separate. Okay, so here we have the background selected. Now, again, there's multiple ways to add layer masks. With compositing, when you're getting into masking, the masking now needs to be a little bit more precise than the last assignment where we had, very loose masking. We were doing our multiple exposure effect. So here I'm going to go under Layer, Layer Mask, and because the background is selected, I want to hide the selection. I don't want to see the background, so I'm going to hide selection. And you see the checkerboard, that just means it's transparent. Now, once you start compositing things, each layer over here will have its own layer 1, 2, 3, and so on. Get in the habit of naming these layers because that way you can find them easily. So there's our phone layer. So let's go ahead and, before we create the effect of reflection, let's go ahead and maybe drop in an image here. So what I'm going to do is go over here and grab this lovely kitty picture. And so what I want to do is I want to take this layer and move it into the one with the phone. And so you need to, and when you don't need to, but when Photoshop is laid out, it tabs these images together. So here, if I click on this tab, we see this phone, and this picture here. And so it does make it a little different to get things from one to another. So there's multiple ways, of course, to do this one effect or one transfer. So one way, layer, duplicate layer up the top here. And instead of choosing the destination as being the same document, I'm going to choose the iPhone layer here, or the iPhone document, and click OK. Now you may not see anything until you go to the actual document, and now we see the cat layer on top of the phone here. Now it's a big layer. It says background because we didn't name it yet, but I can just double click that and call it cats. Cool. Now let's go ahead and save that. Just make sure that we do have it saved. Do a save or save as. And then I'm going to save it to my desktop so I can actually find it faster. Click Save. And now we have a Photoshop document. The key is that it's a PSD file, saved as a Photoshop document. All your layers, if I can speak, will be intact. And so you can go back to your work at any point. Again, the reason why we use layer masks is non-destructive editing. We can go back in and fine-tune as we see fit. Okay, so we'll move more layers around in a bit. So don't worry if that's not the only way to get that done. So again, we did layer, duplicate layer, and we chose the destination as another document. Okay, so let's go ahead, and now obviously this picture is overwhelming the whole scene. So what I want to do is I need to resize this picture to fit within the view of the phone. So I'm going to go under Edit, Free Transform, and you get this bounding box here. And what you can do is you can drag the corners Now if I drag it too much, I'm going to drag it off the screen, so I'm going to click and drag it back in here. And again, I'm going to click and drag, and the idea here is I want to fit it in this area. Give it my best shot. If you have to zoom out, remember we have the navigator here to see the other corners. Okay, so that could work. We can drag it down to here. That's fine. I'm going to zoom back in, Command plus. So once you have it free transform to size, you just double click inside the box, or at the very top you hit this check mark, and that will free transform it into the correct position here and the size. Now I'm going to turn this layer off, because notice that we have extra in the background here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off, and I want to select this white area so that way the cat will fit specifically in that white area and there won't be any like overlap. So I'm using my rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to choose this rectangular shape here and reposition, and cool. Now you could use the quick selection tool. It probably would have done a good job because it's super crisp edges, but just in case, I just thought I'd show how, you know, the rectangular marquee tool, if I can actually let it go here, bam, there it is. So we have a lovely rectangular marquee. What I want to do is mask the cat. Notice over here, there's a little bit of overlap, and that's okay. I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to actually create a new layer. Just came to me because I want the whole background to be black so that it blends in. We don't want this little white chunk here. So let's make a new layer. Layer, new layer. I'm going to call it black. We'll call it black back for background. Do an edit fill. We've done this before. Edit fill. We want to choose black. And we do not want to preserve transparency because the layer is already transparent. Click OK, and now we have that. Now we can deselect. And I'm going to drag this down below the cat. Perfect, nice match, right? And so here we can see it's all in the edges. You can play with the opacity if you didn't want it to be completely black, but we do want, in this case, we want it to be completely black. Now with the cat, we put it in front here, and she fits right in the phone. Okay, and so I'm going to introduce you to another little feature that's really, really, really helpful. We're going to use this more and more as we get into some of the other compositing techniques, and it's called a clipping mask. And so let me zoom in here on this corner. And so if we notice the cat, see how I can show this. So the cat kind of overlaps the phone. You can see it kind of, okay? So notice the cat here, the picture goes outside the frame of the phone. Here with the background, the black background, it's still a little bit on the outside. Kind of, it's hard to see. A little bit, you can kind of see that. So anyway, what we want to do is use one layer to mask another layer. So it's called a clipping mask. So the way this works is I will click on the cat layer and it will be masked by the black background layer. So I turn this off so you can see the difference. Oh yeah, so here you can see the cat picture is coming way outside, not way outside, but outside the frame here. So I'm going to go under Layer, Create Clipping Mask, and notice that piece chipped off. Looking at my layers, we have this little arrow pointing down to this layer, and this layer is now underlined, which means it is a clipping mask. And so the goal of the clipping mask is you can use one layer to mask out another layer. And that's exactly what we just did. So now we turn the phone layer back on, and now all these pieces are working well together. So it looks like the cat picture is in there. If I move the cat picture up, notice the background doesn't change. It's still the black background, and this cat picture, even if I moved it over here, it's being masked by that black background layer. If I change the opacity of the black background layer, it will affect the opacity of the cat as well. So this is reliant on everything with the layer below it. So it's a clipping mask. And so we've got our image composited together, and it's a very simple composite, but definitely effective. And sometimes the simplest composites or simplest approaches are the best. So on this, what we want to do is now make a reflection of this whole image. And so what we do is we duplicate the phone and we flip it. So reflections are just mirror images of the object. So if I click on this phone here, you can see. Notice, even though the phone is tilted backwards a little bit and kind of rotated at an angle, notice that the phone here is vertical. Okay, reflections are always vertical if the surface is flat. You know, if this surface was tilted in any way, then the reflection would also follow along with that tilt. But you can kind of see in the background here this horizon line, even though it's blurry, you can see it, so it means that this background is relatively flat and relatively level. Going back to this image here, we want the same thing. We're just going to mirror image this phone. Now the catch is, because we have 3 different layers now making up this whole composite, then we'd have to flip each one individually and try to reline them up. But there is a it's a technique and a feature where you can actually combine multiple layers together and manipulate those as one unit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my cat layer here. I'm going to hold down the shift key and click on the phone layer. That will select all the layers in between. So basically we want to select all these layers here, and then I'm going to go under Layer, Group Layer, Command G or Control G on the PC. You won't see any visible change here, but now we have a group. Now the group is just like a folder. So if I click on this little arrow, it opens up and I can manipulate each layer independently and individually. I can click on this and now I can move this whole group around as one unit, as opposed to moving around, you know, individual layers. And remember, the move tool is at the very top here, and that's what you use to move objects around within your document. Okay, so this is, we'll double click this on cat phone. And I'm going to go ahead and save it. Just make sure. Whoops. Click Save. Since we already saved it as a Photoshop document, you just click Save, Command S or Control S. Again, Command or Control S. It's grayed out now because I already saved it, so there's no changes. But basically, that's the best thing you can do. Okay, now we want to make a reflection of this. We need more room to work on. Now I can either scale this way down and, you know, flip it, or I can make the screen or the canvas, the area that I'm working on, bigger. So I'm going to make it bigger. So I'm going to go Image, Canvas Size. Now this is just adding more working area to the image. It's not scaling anything up or down. So here the height is 2070. So if I want to double that, I'm going to just say 4140. And remember, the arrows basically say, where do you want to add this new canvas to? So if I want to add it to the bottom, I click on the top here, so those arrows point to the bottom, and it just basically says add any new canvas to the bottom. If I want to go the other way, click on here, it'll add the canvas to the top. But we want to add it to the bottom, so I'm going to click this, click OK, and now you can see the image didn't scale, it just added more space along the bottom here to work in. Okay, so the next few steps, I'm going to go with creating a copy of this, flipping it, and then moving it. So let's do that. So let's do it a different way. So you can go under Layer, Duplicate Group, since it's already a group. Let's do it a different way. I'm going to go ahead and just drag this group down to the new layer icon here, and it will automatically duplicate it. And you can drag any layer onto the new layer icon, and it will duplicate it. And so now we have cat phone. We'll call it cat phone reflection. Since it's an exact copy, you don't really see any change. I can turn it off, no visible change. Now what we want to do is flip it. We want to make that reflection. So under Edit, Transform, and flip vertical. We're flipping it upside down. If you flipped it horizontally, it'd go left to right. Vertical goes top to bottom. Okay. Now the little kitty is on the top, upside down. We're going to use the Move tool here and move this group down. Okay, so now we have a mirror reflection. Well, you're thinking, well, that doesn't look very realistic. And it doesn't. I'm going to move this layer down just for housekeeping. I always like to have the reflection below. And so what we need to do is a couple things. We need to lower the opacity on this to make it more like a reflection. Again, looking at this other image as a sample, depending on the surface, if it's an actual mirror, it would be 100% reflected. But if it's not, if it's translucent or whatever, it's going to have a certain opacity to it or transparency to it. Now the other thing too right now is we really can't see is we don't have really a background, and it's kind of tight here on the side. So I'm going to go back to my canvas size, image canvas size, and let's add some width to it. I'm going to make it 2000 pixels. Whoops, 2000 pixels. And I'm going to leave this in the center because it's going to add it to equally on either side. Cool. Now let's make a new layer. Again, we can click this icon here, make a new layer, and I'm going to call it BG for background. And I'm going to choose a gradient tool, G for gradient, right over here. And I'm going to pick a gradient. I'm just going to go black to white. And if I clicked on it, there it goes. Not sure why that's not changing, but interesting. Okay, bam. Let's see if it works. GGG. Oh, I know why. I can't see it. Sorry. My opacity was set to 10%. Now we can see it. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just drag from the top down. It's going to go from black to white with a linear gradient. And I'm just going to drag a little up above it down to the bottom here. And boom. Now, we lost the other reflection because this layer was inserted in between. All I have to do is change that order, drag it to the bottom, and now we have the little reflection there. Okay, and so if I wanted to, I can move the phone down a little bit more. And so basically, when you have a little separation here, it means that the phone is floating. If it's touching, like this, or a little bit lower. Now when you have the Move tool active, you can use the arrow keys, left, right, up, and down, to nudge the phone into place. Or whatever the object is, you can nudge it into place. And sometimes you can slide it off screen. Okay, so here we have a reflection. I'm going to lower the opacity even a little bit more. And boom. Now the reason why we wanted to do the group and have the cat picture in there because the cat picture would be part of the reflection. And so if we didn't use the group, we'd have to line everything up independently, and that could be just kind of a pain in the neck. It's doable, but there's certain ways you can put things together to kind of save yourself a little bit of a headache. So basically right here we have our reflected image. Super simple. We composited a couple pieces together first. We used a clipping mask to have the cat picture be part of the black background, so I can still, on the top phone layer, if I move the cat picture, they're not connected at the bottom, with the reflection because it's a separate group. But if I wanted to move this over, I could basically go down to this cat layer here and move it similarly and still maintain that same look that I was going after. So basically using clipping masks, layer masks, and then grouping those two pieces together, or those three pieces together to create one movable, editable unit definitely helped, create this realistic composite. Okay, so that's a simple reflection. It took a little while to get there, but we have a couple new techniques and features of Photoshop. Like I said, we have clipping masks, which is this. We have groups, and then we have the canvas sizing, so we can add more canvas to our image to add more space to work in. Stay tuned for some other videos that actually go into a little bit more compositing in a non-clinical sense, where this is just super straightforward, super clean, super simple. We're going to go in and really tighten up some edges on masks and whatnot. So enjoy.